Thank you. All right, really glad you're here. Boy, this has been one of those days from early in the morning until tonight. It'll be real late before I finally stop, but I'm finally glad to be with you and so glad you're here. And those watching online, welcome today to BPL, and my hope is that what we say today may provoke you to do a better job or encourage you at whatever you're doing. And for those of you here live while we're recording this, for the other folks, you look good, and glad you're here. And I want to share with you today some principles that I know in my own life they've helped me. And so I try to take this stuff and go through it as much as I can and say, okay, if I look back, I've read a lot and do a lot of reading and all that. But bottom line is, you can read all the books and you get the knowledge up here, but you got to know, am I practicing and applying things? And so a lot of things I want to share with you are things that I've learned. It's just good old school of hard knock stuff that you can say, yeah, I read that before, tried it, didn't work, don't do that. This is what I found that works better. So I'll give you some of that today that I hope will help you. I'm going to use a Bible story too. I'm going to use a story about King David. I'll give you his setup of who he was. David was the greatest king that ever ruled the nation of Israel. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with Jewish people. I have many close friends that are Jews. What I love about them is they're highly assertive, very aggressive. They're not easy to lead. If you ask me to show me the people that you would have to lead in an organization, if you gave me a Jewish person, the chances are I'd really have to step up the game, because Jewish people are very independent. They're not convinced easily unless you can show them facts. They have their target set that if it doesn't make money or if it doesn't make a difference, then I'm not giving my life or my energy to it. And so imagine this, David is coming along and he's leading them, and he does a great job. But there comes a time that David's about to embark on taking some territory. And in taking that territory, what he's going to do is he's going to get resistance. And it's no different than what you get in your business, no different than what you get in your life if you're trying to do something. And I know we have some folks here. I think some of the Papa John's guys are here today. And so proud of you. Give them a hand if you would. These are some of the people that are just taking on either a franchise or management or growing up in some of those areas. And Scott Pratt, who owns that, is doing a great job of developing people. And so my hope is that you'll recognize a lot of these same principles you're going to use in your life all the time, okay? So let me just jump right in and show you where we are for a minute and see if it helps you, the principles that we know for kind of getting to your destiny. David had already been the king. He'd been crowned the king. He had the title. He had the position, but he had a problem. He was in a city called Hebron, and he had to rule from a city called, or an area called Mount Zion. And it kind of tells me this, just because he had the title didn't mean he was the boss, okay? You ever notice that? A lot of people live for the titles. There used to be a television program called Mayberry RFD. And there was this guy named Andy Griffith, and he was the sheriff. And Andy was calm and collect and cool, and he had a good level head. And Andy didn't even carry his gun. But then he had this deputy named Barney Fife. And we watched the show just to see what Barney's going to do this week. And Barney was typical of a person who had a position but didn't have the confidence or the skills to live out that position. So Barney had the title, but Barney was always incompetent. You remember they gave him one bullet. Andy gave him one bullet, and every now and then he'd fire it by accident. And I don't know if you've ever, I know you have, you've seen people before that were Barney Fifes. You give them a little bit of power, give them a little authority, and it just goes to their head. Literally you can't deal with them. I'll give you an illustration. One time when the church was smaller, we had a building about 1.5 miles from here, and we outgrew it, and that's why we moved over here. And we had bought 5 houses down the block. And so one of the city inspectors came and wanted to tax us on those 5 houses. So when he shows up in his city car and he wants to see the pastor, and I go out there and see him, and I'm as nice as I can be, the guy. But you know how you read people? I knew within a matter of minutes, I said, all right, this is Barney. Okay, this guy's got a badge, a little authority, and he's just dangerous. He gets up in the morning going to work looking forward to writing somebody a ticket, So he starts telling me, you're going to have to pay taxes, back taxes, and taxes presently on this property. And I said, there is no property here. He was parked in a parking lot. We'd already moved the houses 2 years earlier. So we parked in a parking lot. He said, no, you're going to have to move. You're going to have to pay the taxes on this. And this is what it says. And I said, sir, there are no houses. I said, I want you to look. See, just look beyond your paper. You look at here. Do you see a house on this property? Your car is parked where there was a house. Here's what he said. He said, he looked at his sheet. He said, I do not care what I see out here. This paper says there's a house right here. So we're going to have to pay the taxes on that. I had to literally go further and above, and I hated to do that, to bring somebody out that would acknowledge, oh, there's no house here. But here's a guy that's saying, it don't matter if I don't see a house. You know, there's a house right here, according to this paper. And you know, I don't know, you know, common sense is just not that common, you know. Sometimes you have to get beyond what the book says and say, let me look at this, and maybe it worked at one time, but we got to learn to adapt. Well, a person with power without the possession and without maturity, if you put power in the hand of an, I don't want to say idiot or moron, but if you put power in the hands of somebody who's insecure, you're creating a problem. See, authority without wisdom is going to be a problem. And so you want to have wisdom and maturity in the hands of somebody that has it. So what happened is David, he's got the power, he's got the power and the calling, and he's the new king, but he hasn't got the new spot yet. And so he's about to move over there, and he's about to step into that role. It tells me kind of this kind of thing, and that is that titles and position don't make you a leader, okay? Just because you give them a title doesn't mean that, oh, okay, there's a leader. You know, if you just deputize somebody until they're trained and equipped and ready, and that's why all those hard days at work, all those days when nothing's coming together, when it's just very difficult, that's what proves who you are. You know, that's going to show you what's inside and what to work on. Well, David wants to go to Mount Zion, and the only way he's going to get there is he's going to have to fight to get there. There's a group of guys living there in Jerusalem, and they're called Jebusites. And they're a bunch of arrogant people. They've been there for a long time. They feel like, in fact, they literally owned it. They owned the city. They originated the tribe of Benjamin right there. Saul came from that very tribe. They had never, in every battle they'd ever had up until this day, they'd never lost a battle. So they had a pretty good win record. You know, it was like 150 to 0. That was what their stat was. The loss column didn't have anything in it. So you imagine this. Here they are owning this property at this spot, doing what they're doing. And then all of a sudden, this young guy who was a shepherd, he wasn't a warrior, he was a shepherd. Now, he killed Goliath one day, but in their mind, they're thinking, well, he probably got lucky. But that was what made him famous, and that's what the people rallied around him for. But they're looking at him and saying, look, you may have had some battles, and you killed a giant over there. We've never lost. We have an army. And you a bunch of, you know, just misfits that came together following this young shepherd boy who plays a harp and writes psalms. They said, you're not going to have any hope of taking this land. This is our land. And so that was what they thought. They lived behind fortified walls. They had iron gates that protected them. In fact, the tribe of Benjamin were known as called left-handed slingers. They were masters at putting a sling in a rock in a sling and slinging it, and they could hit a mosquito at 100 yards. I mean, they were just good. And so they were thinking, what are you guys going to do to us? We've never lost a battle. Little David's going to come up here, and you're going to start that with us. They were accurate, precise in war. Saul, by the way, the first king before David, Saul, came from that tribe, which means Saul was an accurate slinger also, a great man of war. You remember how David killed Goliath? The way David killed Goliath was the same way. He took a sling, took a rock, put it in a sling, and killed him. That tells me something else about Saul. Saul had left his calling earlier. If Saul had been the man that he was supposed to be and trying to not be somebody different, Saul would have fought Goliath himself. He'd have got his sling and he'd have went out and said, okay, guys, I want to show you how it's done. And he'd have walked out. He was the tallest, biggest one of all of Israel. But instead, he's hiding out down there. And the whole army is hiding out when Goliath said, send a man to fight for me. And so Saul is is hiding out when he should have not left his calling. And the lesson behind that's kind of this, and that's just getting to the points. You got to be who you are. You know, at the bottom line, at the end of the day, while you're going to learn leadership tips and principles and things that work, you really will never do well trying to emulate or be somebody other than you. How you are, listen to your instincts, listen to your gut, look at things through the eyes of, if I'm on the outside looking in, what would I change, fix, do? But don't lose your own identity. Saul did. Saul had the same military skills, but Saul did not use them like he should have, and he set back. If he'd have done what he did, if he'd have done what he was called to do, he could have come and won that battle. When he won the battle, he would have been the hero, and nobody would have known David. That reminds me of a lesson here. I'll give you a quick Bible verse. It's a great verse. The proverb, the wisest man in the world, says this: a man's gifts make room for him. Now let me explain what I mean. A man's gifts make room for him. If you can figure out what your gift is, what you're gifted at, if you're good in sales or presentation or under pressure, or if you're good at fixing problems or seeing solutions nobody else can see, if you're good at feeling the environment and knowing how to adjust, whatever you're good at, listen to your own gifts. All of us have gifts. If I can find out what my gift is, play to your gift. Play to your gift. Your gift will set you before kings, the Bible says. That scripture says it will make room for you. We all know this. You met athletes or entertainers, musicians, people that are at a huge level. And one of the things I'm accustomed to, but in the early days I used to be just so surprised by. I would meet people at a very high level, and I was interested in asking questions, and I found out I would have a stack of 100 questions, and any question that wasn't in their strength area, they didn't know no more than a stranger on the street. I mean, if you asked them about the markets, or you asked them about investments, or you asked them about anything else, and they would be packing stadiums with thousands of people to watch them perform or hear them sing. But those very same people, if you get them outside of their strength, they can't, if it's not writing a song, or if it's not playing or running a ball, they don't know any more than we do. We sometimes put them on pedestals, but you know what they did? They did what we all ought to do. They followed their gift. They let their gift be what brought their income. They let their gift be what brought their influence. And so it's not as far out as you think. The best way that you can grow is, on the start, is look in the mirror. And here's another way to do it. If I'm finding my gift, one is find out what gives me energy, what makes me get passionate, what I love doing. What do I do that even if I got paid for doing, that I would say, man, I can't even believe I get a check for this because this was fun. On top of that, ask your friends. Ask the people that know you best, what is it that I bring to the table? What is it that makes me who I am that you want to be a part of? What is it that does it? And inquire of those around you. And that'll help you to kind of find your gift. And then everything you can do to kind of play toward that, it makes a big difference. Now, here's what's going to happen. The story goes like this. It says, I'll read a verse or two for you. It says, then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron, and all these tribes showed up beside him. And they said, behold, we are your bone and your flesh. They said, previously when Saul was king over us, you were the one that led us out and in. They were saying, David, you've always been our leader. We've always followed you. And the Lord said to you, you will shepherd my people Israel, and you will be a ruler over Israel. And the first thing you find in that chapter is this. David's got to go get that region. He's got to go and set up his kingdom. But what I love is right off the bat, his men come to him, and they say, David, we're with you. We see God's hand on you. We know that you have more. You bring more to the table than the average leader. So they said, David, you step out and we're stepping in. We're with you. We're all the way. We're bone of your bone, flesh of your flesh. Here's what that principle is. It's called develop a true allegiance to authority. If I had to go through it, in fact, I'm going to give you just 3 principles, but this is one of those that is so overlooked and almost a part of our DNA or habits if we have not ever been taught it. I think that's the key to the big picture or the big level. An allegiance to authority is essential. I learned this when I was probably 21 years old. A friend of mine said, and I've never known the feeling of jealousy. Now, there's some things I've known. You know, I've known anger. I was angry an hour ago, and I was over it. But I had a conflict with somebody an hour ago, and I said, okay, now you've been honest with me. Now I'm gonna be honest with you. And I think he didn't like my honesty as much as he thought he would. But that's okay. I've known anger. I've never known what it's like to feel jealous, and I'm grateful for that because I want you to win. That's the whole reason I do this. I want you to win. If you win, I win. If you don't win and I helped you, then I made a mistake. It's kind of like many years ago, I was in North Carolina. A professor from the University of North Carolina had dinner with me. A friend had introduced us, and I have been intrigued by what he said back then. His claim to fame was that he'd been a professor, and nobody in all of his days of teaching has ever failed a class. And this guy gets it. So I just turned to him and said, I want to know, what is your driving value? Because that determines everything. And he said, thank you. Here's what it is. He said, if a student fails, I failed. They didn't come to class so that they would fail. They came to class in hopes they would learn and grow. He said, so I take teaching this way. If they fail, I'm not a good teacher. He said, it has nothing to do with their ability. It's all mine. And he said, so I set a goal that anybody that comes to my class will win. He said, now that means at times I have to sit down with somebody that didn't have a good background or a basis, but I always decided you're going to win. He said, now I'm at the place I say, you're not going to break my record, okay? I'm known for having never failed anybody, so you're not going to be the one to mess that up. But he said, at the end of the day, everybody does well, but he's learned that. Well, when I mention this, I learned this long ago. Watch how people treat authority. That will tell you 90% of who they are. If you work for somebody, you always have their back. You always, there's no exception. You may even disagree with their methodology, but at the end of the day, they pay the check, okay? So you do what the boss says do regardless. And I've been tested in that. I worked on 3 or 4 different staffs in many other places. In fact, the last staff that I worked on before I came here, the biggest compliment I ever got, the boss pulled me aside and said, Bill, I have never in my life met anybody, and I've hired hundreds through the years. I've never known anybody that knew loyalty like you do. Well, I believe in that. I believe if you don't have loyalty, what purpose is there to be alive? To me, that's the highest value a human being can have. Loyalty and integrity are the only two that I value the greatest. Loyalty means this. I will stick by you. I don't care if nobody does. It doesn't matter. I've never lost a friend, okay? There's no such thing as losing a friend. See, there's no such thing as an ex-friend, okay? If they are ex, they never were, okay? We have a tendency to say, well, they're not my life. No, if they're your friend, they're in your life no matter what, okay? They're in your life no matter what. You don't give up friends. Loyalty to authority makes all the difference in the world. And how we respond to authority is the way that God is going to give us authority. If I want people to be loyal to me, I got to be loyal to people. And if I want God to bless me with more, then I got to do the best I can with where I am. And if I'm working under somebody, whatever the boss says do, I just assume several things. One is he's the boss or she's the boss. Number 2 is that they're the ones got to answer for it at the end. So I'm going to do what they tell me to do, even though I may think I know better. Now, privately, I may sit with them and say, is this the best method? Or do you think this is the best strategy? I have an idea. And a secure boss will say, tell it to me. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is whatever they say do, you do. It's like a football player. When he goes out to play, there's a man on the sideline called the coach. And that player better play like that coach told him to. Because if they have a losing season, guess who gets fired? The coach. Because they just make a natural assumption that the players are going to run the play the coach called. So if you're working with somebody, you don't have to try to build an independent movement of your own. I can't stand ego. Ego is one of those things that I know better than the boss. I know better than them. I'm smart. Nobody's that smart, okay? And so what you want to do is say, I'm going to learn. I was with a man one time driving down the road, and we're friends, so I can say this to him. And I'm always nice with people, nicer with people that I may not know, but privately with friends, you can let your hair down. And we're just driving down the road, and he's just telling me how smart he is and what he could do better and all that stuff. And I said, hey, let me help you. When you reach the age of 45, until then, just shut up. You know, you ain't been around. You don't know nothing. I said, let me look at your passport. If you ain't been to 25 countries, shut up, okay? You ain't been nowhere. You read the books, but where'd you go? If you have not eaten with people that had nothing, just shut up. Listen, learn. And I said, you're too young, and he and I, we're friends, and he makes a lot. He makes probably, I guess, about $40 million a year. He's done well, and he can do better. But he's my friend, and I had to be honest with him, and he's honest with me. I said, until you hit about 45, you just need to shut up. Just don't say nothing. Be a listener. And I said, do you know how stupid it sounds for you to talk about stuff you ain't never done? And he hadn't. Now, in his business, he did well, but there's so many other areas he was just lacking. And here's what's crazy. He will send me, up until he got to be 45, this was the funniest thing my wife got, but he'd send these cards, a Christmas card, and he'd put, I'm still keeping quiet. And then when he turned 45, he wrote me, he said, I can talk now and I got a lot to say. And he remembers that conversation. What I was saying to him is, wait till you got it before you deliver it, okay? Don't try to deliver it learn now. Every day is a learning experience. Every day you take in, you grow, you learn, and look at it like I don't have to have all the answers yet, but if I keep on plodding in that direction, one day I'm going to have it. And that's what David did. David stayed out in the field all these years, and nobody saw him. He was killing lions and bears when nobody was watching. That's why when the day came he went out to fight Goliath, they said, aren't you afraid? What are you going to do? You don't even have the armor on. He didn't try to dress up like Saul. Saul tried to put his armor. David said, I don't need that. I'm not going and trying to pretend to be Saul. I know how to handle it. Let me have a sling and 5 rocks, and I'll take care of the big guy. And they said, are you afraid? He said, no, I've been killing lions and bears when nobody was watching. It didn't make the paper, nobody knew. See, if you've been doing it in secret, the time comes that all of a sudden you publicly put on the spot, it's not a problem. You've done it before. Some of you knew I brought my friend Frank Shamrock here about last year. He's my Father's Day gift and spent the days with us. And then and Frank was a 5-time UFC world heavyweight champion. And so Frank we would laugh about it. We were sitting at home one night talking. I said, Frank, were you ever afraid? He said, not one time. I said, do you ever think you'd lose? And he didn't. He said, no, he didn't lose his title. He retired as a champ. And he said, never. And I remember that me and him and Debbie sitting in the living room by the fireplace, and he says, Bill, listen to me. He said, when you know that you know, he said, these guys will get on that microphone and they'll talk all that stuff and what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do. He said, but the minute they lock that octagon and he locks eyes with me, he said, I knew right then, you're in over your head. He said, I knew it. He said, because I've been fighting all my life. He said, I fought when I was in prison. I fought when I was in the streets. I fought here. He said, it ain't nothing for me. I finished the world's best in 13 seconds. He said, so they can do all that talking. He said, and I always loved that feeling. The moment they shut that octagon cage, he said, they look at me, they'd be thinking, oh no, it just got real. Well, see, when you have been doing it over and over and over, you're not intimidated when the problem comes. So if you learn now, just keep learning now, building your resume, learning all you can, taking it all, there'll be a day that you'll step into a role that God gives you. And when you do, all of a sudden, you're making decisions easier and better because you've done it when nobody was seeing. And so that's that growth process. But the secret's going to be starting with real allegiance to those that are above you. And it doesn't get any clearer than that. So just do what they say to do as they say do it. It'll change your life. Now, so David's men understood that. They understood David's killed giants. David's a man of war. Man, if I follow what David says, we can get there. And they understood that principle. And here's what happens. When David won, they won. See, when David lived better, they lived better. The big picture was at the end when David moved into the big castle there in Jerusalem after they conquered, guess what? All of those men and their families were rewarded, and they all lived well too. They weren't living in caves and out in the wilderness anymore. But they all came together because they understood the issue of authority. When you live under authority, here's what happens. It solves a lot of problems. Here's what you'll love. You'll love the fact that some problems you can pass up because you don't have to be the know-it-all. You can say, hey, that's the boss's, whatever the boss says. It handles financial problems, relationship problems, guidance issues. Here's what will happen too. if they see you follow authority, you know what they'll do? They will follow authority. They'll model what you do. If you want your children to do well, we had this, we just had this philosophy when our kids are coming up. That teacher went to school, got an education, gets paid for to teach you. So she knows more than you do in these areas. So we have this rule with our kids coming up. Whatever the teacher said about you at school is what we'll say about you at home. If the teacher said you're giving a good effort, we'll say good for you. If the teacher says you're not giving a good effort, we're going to say you're not giving a good effort. We never let them talk about a teacher in a derogatory way to us. Whatever, if they came up, you know what that teacher said? I'd say that teacher's been around longer than you. Are you the teacher or the student? Well, but the teacher. Yeah, but you're not sitting in that desk. Things are a whole lot different behind the boss's desk, okay? They're a lot different. You see more. You see differently. And so we stood behind the teachers. And I stood behind the teachers not because I didn't love my kids. I stood behind my teachers because I never wanted my kids to feel the freedom that I can criticize authority. Because if I criticize authority, there'll come a day that I'll be lazy. I'll never make it anywhere. I'll always think I know more than I do. And that limits my long-range potential. So you stay in a teachable mode by standing under authority at all times. Very important. Now, let me show you what else happens. The second principle is this. Expect adversity. Now, if it was easy, everybody's going to be doing it, okay? So if you've got a position, a role, and you want to be your best at it, you're going to have to make some breakthroughs. Now, here's what happens to David. David wants to get over there. Verse 6 says, now the king and his men went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites. When the men said, we're with you, David, we're going with you, we'll take it with you, David said, okay, guys, let's go. And they head out. Now it says they went to the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, and they said to David, this is what the Jebusites, talk about arrogance. The Jebusites said, you shall not come in here, but our blind and lame will turn you away, thinking David cannot enter here. Now, do you hear the disrespect? I mean, these guys they've never lost a war, sure, and they're men of war, but they didn't give an ounce of respect to David. They said, David, our blind and our lame, the weakest of our army, are going to turn you away. And that was how they felt to him. Now, I want you to know when you set out to really win, you're going to hit some adversity. Some of you that are young, your friends may not understand your dream. Your family may not support it. There may be people closest to you that say, I don't think you're capable. Are you sure? Do you think? And if you're trying to get support from everybody before you launch out on what's in your heart, you need to quit before you start. Everybody's not going to be on board. The fact is, did you know that before I became pastor of this church, and now we run 4 services and God's blessed all that, but it's the smallest church in all of the Columbus area and didn't have any salary and there was nothing there. And I remember more and more people that I thought were friends that told me, why would you do that? There'll never be anything. That church has no potential. You'll never. And I don't know about you, but when I hear people say you can't, there's something in me that says I'll prove it, And if you got that in you, that is a good trait. It's almost like you're going along until they say you can't do that. And the minute they say you can't, it ought to inspire something in you that says, oh yeah? And what that means, that's an independence in you. That means that there's some trait in you that says, I don't like to be controlled or put down. Those of you that you're getting into positions where you get to lead, you need to just stop and look at it and say, you know something? I may not have but one shot, but I'm going to give it such a good shot that I'm going to learn something. We're going to grow something. I'm just putting all my cards on the table. I'd make a terrible gambler, okay? Because after one good hand, I'd suddenly say, hey, next shot, next pot, I'm putting it all in. You know how they wait and they build these guys up and then they call at the end? I'd call on the first play. They'd read my face. If I had a straight flush, I'd put it all in on the first hand. I don't know that bluffing stuff. I think what we've got to do is the same thing. If you get a job or you get an opportunity to say, this is your chance for management, then you need to go in there as if there's nothing else in the world. Years ago, I watched that movie. It was called The Verdict. It's an old movie. Paul Newman was in it. He was a lawyer who had failed and went through a difficult time. And then he got a chance to have a case. And it was the first case he'd had for years. And there's a scene in that I used to be motivated by Paul Newman would look there at the paperwork in this old dingy apartment, and he's facing a team of lawyers that are funded by the Catholic Church and a lot of resources. And Paul Newman is looking at this and he's going, there is no other case. This is the case. There is no other case. This is the case. And he's so put everything on it. It's like, if this fails, my life's over. I looked at that and said, that's the way we ought to approach life about a lot of things we do. If you step into a role where they say, here's your responsibility, you need to say, I'm going to make that work so well. If I have to get there earlier, stay there later, work longer, watch what everybody else is doing, see how this thing's operating, put myself in the position of the customer coming through the door. I'm going to go through that and study it like the back of my hand, and in no time, I'm going to know all about it to a level that I can take control and make decisions and change things. And when you begin to do that, it'll change your life. There's no reason in America why you can't make all the money you want to make. When people say, I just can't make money. Good night. Making money is easy. That's about the easiest thing you'll ever do if you change your mindset. Most people, the problem is between their ears. It's not hard to make money. It's hard to lose weight, okay? That's hard, okay? Literally, I work out like crazy and I'm 1 pound. But I've got in my mind, I beat that one. I still beat that one more. You got to have that in you that says, I'm going to get to the top. I'm going to make it the best. I'm going to do the best I can with what I have right now and see what it does at the end of it. If you don't do it, you can't wait for opportunity to come to you and say, well, they're lucky, or if I can get that. No, you go grab it and make it. Now, you got to expect adversity. And here's what happens. The Jebusites were proud. They didn't respect David. They dishonored him. Our blind and lame will turn you away. It tells me this. For us, our own life, you don't know what you are until you're tested. You have no idea what you are until you're tested. I have a friend of mine that he opened my eyes years ago to this. We went to a Promise Keepers meeting. And you know, Promise Keepers, one of these things where all these men go to and they make all these promises. And the guy I was with was so good looking. He's probably one of the best looking men you'll ever meet. I promise you. And he knew it, but he wasn't arrogant about it. He just was born with a beautiful look. Physically, his face, everything about him. And there was never a day that women weren't throwing themselves at him. And I used to just feel bad for him because I said, I was blessed with a sufficient amount of ugliness. I didn't have to worry about those temptations. So I didn't know what it's like living through his eyes. And he'd get out of the car. I was meeting him at the Promise Keepers thing. He lived down in Tampa, and I pulled in. And when I met him at the car, he comes walking across. And just walking toward the airport, women with their husbands are stopping. And they're looking at him. And I'm thinking, geez, every day he gets more beautiful. I mean, he's stopping. And we get together. We're walking out the door. And we get to his car. Now, he's pulled up in his car, got out of his car, walked in there, and got me. We walk out to the car. He reaches up and grabs something off the windshield, and it's a note. And he just shakes his head and says, unbelievable. And he throws the note down the seat. So I pick up the note, and I wonder, who left this on the note? It was a note, and it said, I saw you getting out of your car. I've never seen such a fine specimen of a man in my life. My number is so-and-so if you're available. And he gets that every day, okay? Every day of his life, he gets that. And so that's on his car. So he just throws it in the seat. Then we go to the Promise Keepers meeting. We're sitting in the Promise Keepers meeting, and all of a sudden the speaker, Bill McCartney, the coach there at Colorado, says, how many of you men are making a vow to God that you'll never cheat on your wife, that you're going to be faithful to your wife? I want you to stand up. And so they stood up. Now, my friend is sitting here. He didn't stand up. And he looks at me, and he ain't been in the Christian environment much, and he's watching 1,000 men stand up. And this is embarrassing, but it's true. He looked at me and he said, Bill, are they serious? Is this real? And I said, what? I'm thinking, oh, here he goes. The real him's coming out. He said, my soul, look at this. He said, and then he just starts talking. He said, be real. Who's going to tempt this guy? And these guys are standing right beside him. He said, right, who's going to tempt him? He said, look at him. He said, who in the world is going to tempt him? He said, that guy. He said, please, I'm going to be faithful to my wife. He said, they ain't never had a temptation. How you know you're going to be faithful? He said, the first person that looks at them, winks at them, says, give me your number, he said, they're going to fall off. He said, my soul. He said, they don't even know what a temptation is. And I looked at it from his eyes and thought, he's right. He knows what it's like to be tempted every single day. And yet here's people he's saying, what are they going to do? I mean, anybody can tempt them. He's saying, and I got to think about it and say, that's true. If you're not self-disciplined, you think about this when you try to lose weight. When I try to lose weight and I'm trying to be on a diet, any food can tempt me. It don't have to take a gourmet chef. I drive down the road and see a McDonald's burger, and okay, I give you in. And so what he's saying is unless you're totally secure and know your weaknesses and know your strengths, you don't know who you are until you're tested. Your testing shows you who you are. It brings out what's on the inside. And so that's what it does. So you understand that? You can't do life by just reading a book. You can't do it by just living through somebody else's life or their experiences. You discover life when you've been tempted. You discover life when you've been on that road. You understand yourself better when you're there. So if I want a real breakthrough and I want to make a difference, I've got to be serious enough to say, if I want the breakthrough, there's going to be a battle. But there's no such thing as a victory without a battle. We always want a victory. Well, how are you going to get a victory if you don't have a battle? So you got to be willing to say, I'm going to face some adversity. It's not going to be easy. But if the smoke clears and the dust settles and I'm still standing, hey, I moved the ball and I got there. And so David's saying, look, I want you to know, Jebusites, we're coming. You may have never lost before, but guess what? You're going to get a new experience today. And David's going with as much passion and as much belief that I took out a giant, I got a rowdy bunch of men, we don't have nothing to lose, okay? If you're the one's got something to lose, and I'm coming. And David went, and he faced his adversity. And facing the adversity is the key. You don't know how strong you are until you do that. The third thing I'll give you is this out of the story. Your attitude is one of your greatest assets. I believe that's the killer. I think that's the winner. I think the attitude is all of it. It says in verse 7, when they said, our lame and our blind are going to turn you away. You know what David said? David didn't say, oh, no, they even got strong, lame, and blind. You know what David said? Verse 7 says, nevertheless, I love that phrase, nevertheless, David captured the stronghold of Zion, and he lived in the stronghold. And then he did even this. He changed the name of the city and called it the city of David. He said, not only will I conquer it, I'll just remove your memory. It's going to now be known as the city of David. And it says, and he became greater and greater. It started with his attitude. You alter your life when you alter your attitude. In an airplane, they have these indicators. One of them is called an attitude indicator. And it tells you where you are on the altitude. Your altitude tells you where you are in horizon. If you tilt the plane nose down, it begins to go down. If you tilt that up, it goes up. But the attitude indicator is the issue. In my own life, in your life, my attitude determines where I'm going. My attitude determines how happy I'm going to be. My attitude determines whether or not I look at a problem like it's overwhelming, or I look at a problem like, hey, it's just a test and I can get through this. And so your attitude is going to alter your life, good or bad. You ever met somebody with a great attitude that made you believe you could do things that you couldn't do? I mean, you just said, and that's kind of my gifting. I pushed a lot of people off cliffs, and most of them have succeeded, but there have been some that looked back and doubted. But my goal is to push you past your comfort, and we all need that. We need somebody that pushes us. Your attitude is either your greatest friend or your worst enemy. Have you ever met people that had a terrible attitude? I mean, that you just meet them and you go, oh, Lord. They drain you just walking up, And you just know life is not nearly as bad as they make it, but when they're around you, geez. That's why if you got a business, one of the best things you can do is make sure you got a great attitude that no matter what. Like, here's what I like and don't like. I like it when there's a problem or something that can't be found or done, and you ask someone, can this be done? And their first response before they hear out the problem is, we'll find a way. Isn't that cool? Isn't it refreshing to find somebody that says, we'll find a way, we'll make it work? And as opposed to somebody that no matter what you say, well, we can't do that. Well, we can't afford that. Well, we don't have the resource for that. Well, I don't know the right people. Listen, those kind of people, they're like Eeyore down at Disney World, just whining all the time. And I want to think, well, go get a job where there's something in your level then. Either find something that you can do and do all out and make a way and make it happen. Everybody I know that made it to the top, they had a can-do attitude. They said, I can do this. There's no question about it. I can do this. You give me the problem, I'll make this happen. And the people that have the can't-do attitude, guess what? They get out of life exactly what they put in. They can't do it. In fact, it's almost like you want to say to somebody these two words as soon as they tell you, I can or I can't. You ought to say, you're right. For the rest of your life, you can or you can't. But that's exactly, whatever it is. If you say, I can't do it, you just close the door and it can't be done. On the other hand, if you say, I can, I'll find a way. It won't be easy. I may not get support. Nobody else may be with me and I go it alone. But I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, I'm going to get there anyway. And that's the attitude issue, that the attitude makes all the difference in the world. People want to be around people with a good attitude. A good attitude will make you even want to be around yourself. You don't even have to have a lot of encouragement if you got a good attitude. And people with a bad attitude, no matter how good it is, all they ever see is the bad about it. And so it's the kind of deal that, you know, the question is, if I say all winners have great attitudes, that makes me ask myself a question. Is it the win that gave them the attitude, or is it the attitude that gave them the win? Which one came first? I'm convinced it's the attitude that gave them the win. I think it's the attitude that put them in the place. Okay, I wanted to see the Falcons this year win. All right, I thought it was about their time. I said, okay, man, we got so close. I was right there all along. And they would have won if they'd have played anybody but Tom Brady, okay? Anybody but him, they would have probably won because they were playing the very best game they could play. But they happened to be playing somebody whose attitude is always locked. It's in. And you saw Brady going out there, and no matter how far they were behind, he never seemed to look at the scoreboard. It just didn't matter. It was like to him, hey, it's still my game. I own it. And until you take it away, it's not going. And by the end of the game, as much as I still loved the Falcons, I had to respect Tom Brady and the Patriots. I remember watching when Cam Newton was over there and I saw it the first game, but when he was over there at Auburn, and even when they played Alabama and they got behind 21 points before the first half, and Alabama is the legend. They're the powerhouse. And the camera was showing, and it caught him, and I kept thinking to myself, that boy don't know what the score is. They're behind. And he's walking around, clapping his hands, and like, man, we're about to play a game now. And I'm about thinking, everybody in the stands knows y'all are behind. The coach knows you're behind. Somebody hadn't relayed the message to Cam because Cam acts like we got them right where we want them, 21-0, you know. And you remember when they came out, they turned it around and won. They won for no other reason than that they had a leader who had an attitude that we can do this, we can conquer this, it's not bad. That's the thing that I'm telling you. There's a picture, I mentioned Frank Shamrock a moment ago. There's one of those beautiful pictures on the web where a guy had him down and was about to hit him, had his hand above him, about to hit him, Phil Baroni. And you got Frank on his back. He's looking back at the camera, watching Fox, and he does this here. He gives him a peace sign. He's about to get hit in the head. He's saying, I'm going to win. And sure, if the next move, he wins. You know, he puts him in a hole and ends. I think all along, you know, most people have been cringing, dug in the fetal position. And here he is smiling at the camera. When you can have that kind of attitude, when you walk into your work and one day everything's going to go wrong, one day nobody's going to show up, supplies aren't there, and the customers are disappointed, and you can walk in there with the attitude, hey, that's all right. Coach is here. We're going to fix this. The leader's in the room now. It's okay. There's something about that sets everybody else at ease. And it puts people in the mindset, hey, we can win. And then after a while, they start realizing this can win. And then you get all of them up. But it takes the leader who has the right attitude. So the secret's going to be in what's your attitude. You can do this. You believe in that. And that's why I say the attitude's going to adapt. The attitudes determine a lot of things. Winners find solutions. Losers find excuses, okay? Your attitude determines how many friends you're going to have in life. You want a lot of friends? Have a good attitude. You'll draw them. Your attitude determines how you adapt when a problem comes, when a conflict, a crisis comes. Your attitude is going to determine how do I adjust through this. I had a bad situation the other day, very, very bad, and my boathouse caught on fire. A guy was painting up there, and I had my house for sale, And in the sale of the house, the man wanted to stain my decks. And I said, okay, that'll be the negotiating part. You can stain my decks. Lo and behold, I get a phone call. My boat house is on fire. My bass boat is burned up. It's a $60,000 beautiful top of the line. There ain't a bass boat like it in America. I specially custom designed it 3 years ago, and it burned to nothing. My wife's little ski boat burned up. The boat house burned down. And I mean, it couldn't have happened at a worse time, and now I'm out a ton of money, and you got the insurance stuff and all that. And all my neighbors, I was trying to sleep out of the neighborhood quietly and go to another neighborhood. When the fire's going on and all your neighbors stand on the dock, I didn't accomplish that. Now everybody knows it. But I remember walking through that, and I said, I can have two attitudes. I can say, I just lost a ton, and I just went through a big loss, and I just burned, all this stuff's burned down. And I decided I can go through with a bad attitude, or I can say, what's the good came out of it? 25 feet further, it would have hit a propane gas tank, blew up my neighbor's house, blew up mine, hurt all them. It could have burned the main house down. I still had my health. The wife was in Florida at the time. Funniest thing was she called me that night not knowing. She called me on the phone. She said, well, you've been gone. We hadn't seen each other in 14 days. She said, well, I've been gone 14 days. You ain't burned down the house yet, have you? I said, well, did you hear anything? No, what? I said, sit down. And so, but I decided I'm going to change my attitude. I just quickly decided I got one thing I can fix my attitude and thank God that everything's well, or I can whine about it and mope about it and complain about it. And at the end of the day, the first thing people are going to say is, I'm so sorry. And the second thing they're going to say when they hear it is, okay, well, we heard that. And the third thing they're going to say is, you're not over that yet? And so there's no reason to go through life with that. So you change your attitude, no matter how bad. Your attitude makes the difference. Now, the attitude also has an effect on who you attract and who you repel. By the way, if you have a good attitude in your life, you will repel people that don't have one or want one. You ever been around people that they don't want to hang out with somebody who's got a good attitude because they want to be in an environment where we create this story of how bad, woe is me, and all that. Good attitude has an effect on it. A good attitude, by the way, it has an effect on how large your organization grows. If I want to know if my organization grows, mark this down. I have a friend, Charlie Lindsay's right here this morning, one of the best friends I got in the world. And Charlie's been around the world, and he sees it, and he knows it. I guarantee you he'll agree with me. The higher the leader, the better the attitude. The fact is that the ones at the bigger levels have the greatest attitude. The ones at the lower levels have the worst attitude. It tells you that the better attitude will take you to the top, and a bad attitude will keep you at the bottom. So the takeaways, a couple of them are this: authority will make or break us. A nevertheless approach to adversity will move you closer. Your attitude will affect the outcome. And then I'll give you these other final thoughts along that line. That's this. One is, new levels of growth require new levels of sacrifice. You know the hardest thing about this? You'll pay a price to get where you are, but if you want to get further, you've got to pay another price. I always wish it was like, you kind of wish life was like this, like you buy one ticket and get in. Kind of like going to Six Flags, you buy one ticket, you ride everything. It's not true in life. Did you know in life, you got to buy a ticket for everything you do? You got to pay a price to have a good marriage. You got to pay a price to make money. You got to pay a price in your spiritual life. You got to pay a price in your relationships. And so everywhere that I want something from, I got to pay a little price. I got to be willing to work at it, invest in it, make sacrifices. So new levels of growth require new levels of sacrifice. Our church always grows. It's just been growing and growing nonstop. Sometimes when we ask questions to people ask questions, they'll say, Brother Bill, has your church ever stopped growing? And I said, no. They said, will it ever stop growing? I said, sure, it could. And they'll ask, well, how would it stop growing? And the answer is real easy. The answer is the simplest thing. It's the same thing for your life, your organization. Your life and your organization stops growing the moment the price to pay for growth becomes too high. When all of a sudden you say, I don't want to make the next risk or price. I'm comfortable where I am. I'm good here. I don't want to have to sacrifice or risk or put that much work in it. We say, I want it, but I don't want it bad enough to do this. Then it stops. I have a niece that's phenomenal winner. She had 109 scholarships to college. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Everywhere you want to go. Phenomenal swimmer. And she had a great job with Coca-Cola. And she just called me the other day. She's 24, I think. And she called me, I'm going to see her tonight. I had to go up to Atlanta later on tonight for a goodbye party for her. But she's packing up everything she's got, walking away from everything, and she's taking a drive and moving all the way to San Diego. Because she got out there, she likes it, she likes culture, she saved her a little bit of money, and she's making the move. And I said, Raquel, why are you doing it? She said, I'm single. And she's very good looking. She said, I'm single. I got my education. She said, I don't have a lot of money yet, but I've got all this. She said, what better chance will I have? And I said, but you don't know anybody there. She said, well, I'll meet people there. She said, I met people where I've been everywhere else. I'll meet them. I said, are you afraid? She said, I'm a little nervous that I'll miss family. But she said, Uncle Bill, I don't want to waste my life being afraid of what I should have done or regrets of what I could have done. She said, so you better say bye to me tonight, because tomorrow morning I'm packing up and I'm moving to San Diego. And at worst case, if it don't work, she said, then I always come back where I was somewhere. But if it does work, I at least get to find out because I tried it. And I like that attitude. I love the attitude, okay, let's roll the dice. Let's step in and do it. And so that's the key to getting there with the new level. The second thing about that is this: to get what you want, you must be willing to give up some things you have or people in your life. Sometimes you got to give up to go up. You ever seen these mountain climbers? You know, they climb these big mountains. They go up with this big bag. But at every level, they start letting stuff off. And by the time they get to the top, they don't have but some necessary items because they've used all the rest or let it go. The further you go, the more you got to let go of some things that you can't hold on to anymore. But you also have to let go of some people. Now, this may be hard if you're emotionally or relationally connected to people. Not everybody that starts your journey with you will finish with you, okay? They just won't. I wish they would, but I've had a lot of people that started the journey with me and they quit. And one of the biggest days, I think, for me was one day I was grieving about that. I had a dear friend that I loved and helped, and he was a great guy, good executive, but he suddenly kind of got off the journey. He thought my pace was too fast and my willingness to take risk was too much for him. And so he just said, Bill, I love you, I respect you, but you're wanting to push it further than I can, so I'm going to step back. And he stepped back. And I was grieving about that. And I remember that my wife that afternoon said, what's wrong? And I said, I was really disappointed because he and I have invested a lot together. We put a ton of money down one time on something that went real well, and we fished together. We did a lot of good stuff. And I said, now all of a sudden I just hear today, blindsided, that he's going to get off the journey. And I'll never forget, my wife turned to me and said, Bill, can I help you with something? She said, you're going to do real good in life one day if you'll make one choice. Now, I'm listening because she's wise on that. She knows me. And I said, what's that? She said, when people want to get off, let them off. She said, it's like you want to go somewhere and you got this bus and you keep putting people on, and some people don't want to go as far. They're comfortable. They want to stay right where they are. She said, and then instead you want to talk them back on and stay on. It's going to be great, and here's where you'll be. She said, stop. She said, when they want to get off, just pull over the bus, let them off. God bless you. It's great while we had you. She said, and get back on your journey and never look back. She said, one day they're going to look at you and say, I wish I had stayed with him because then I could enjoy those experiences. And she said, and that's their choice and that's their regret. But you got to learn to let people go a lot easier. And I found that's true. And I think that's true for all of us. Some of you, as you grow and go, you're going to change relationships. Now, you can always love them, but they may not be on the journey. The question is, emotionally, can you let them go? Can you say, I'm not going to let them hold me where they're comfortable. I'm going to let them go if necessary so I can go where I need to be. So you got one life. Your life's like a dollar bill. You can spend it any way you want, but you can't spend it but one time. So you better figure out what you're going to do with your life. You're not responsible for everybody else. You're responsible for you. So you just decide, I'm going to give it the best I can, and I'm going to let people go if I need to or change if I need. And the third thing along that line is this. Realize that even your closest friends will never fully appreciate the price you pay for success. They just won't know. And that's okay. They don't have to know. You know. But as you move forward, don't expect everybody to say, I appreciate all the work you did. No, they just saw the public work. They didn't see the private work. They didn't know all the stuff that you did privately. We all do that. Whatever your work is, you do. I spoke 2 weeks ago 17 times in 1 week, And then last week, 14 times in 1 week. And this week, it'll be somewhere around 13 times or 14, somewhere in there, just this week. Now, that's easy for me. The speaking part is not hard. That's easy. That's like eating Thanksgiving dinner for me, okay? But, you know, if you're cooking Thanksgiving, you know how long it takes to prepare it? You got to buy it and find it and cook and all that. Every message takes about 20 hours of work. And so when you say 17 times in 1 week, 14 times in 1 week, 13 times, that means 5 a.m. yesterday until 1 o'clock in the morning all day and eating a snack at noontime at a table and never getting up. That means every day studying. When other people are watching TV, I don't even know what's on TV. I'm reading books and studying and asking questions and learning because I got to give it out. Now, I don't expect everybody to appreciate what you do. I don't expect that. I don't expect to get patted on the back for it, okay? I live good, make good, have great friends, but it's a price you pay. And so no matter how far you go, if you're waiting on all your friends and family to come up and say, I'm so proud of you, man, you just put in the work and you paid the price. Even if they are sincere, they still don't have a clue as to how much sweat and blood and tears you've actually put into it. It's kind of like those school teachers. We think, oh, they get 3 months off. No, these school teachers, by the time they get off work, they still stay till 7 o'clock at night grading papers, then having to deal with parents and all the rest. But we think, oh, they got it made. Policemen, oh, you just ride around the car and go to the donut shop. No, they're knocking on doors at 1 o'clock in the morning, not knowing who's behind that door and what could happen. In every job, there's a side to it we don't see that's under the surface. And so you got to be willing to say, hey, this is what I get paid for. This is what I do. No one may understand all I have to do it. It won't be easy. But at the end of the day, I promise you this, it will succeed. And those are the kind of principles you want to keep in your life. That's the attitude, the adversity issue, and the authority. So it's all the 3 A's really. The authority that I recognize and work under, the adversity that I got to work through, and the attitude that I got to bring to every job. All right, let me pray with you for a moment. Father, thank you for everyone here today. Bless their lives and guide their steps. Give them in their life the passion and the zeal and the willingness to be teachable and pay the price to enjoy the success that you're giving to them. I pray that you'll give them insight into their jobs that helps them to do better than they ever thought they could. So, Lord, we give you our future, we give you our life, and we ask you to let us be the very best at it, we pray in Jesus' name. All right.